Hi, thanks for joining us here on another episode of the
Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
We have a lot of fun here, and today's no exception. We've got a great guest, Jason Conley of Invista. And Jason is a digital forensics expert. And one of his expertises, mobile digital items. Your cell phone. What more could you ask for? So we're going to have a little fun with Jason. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself and some of the fun that he could have. So we look forward to you joining us. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe and like this program. And if you don't like it, well, that's okay too. You don't have to worry about it. So do me a favor, hit the dislike button twice. See ya.
John, Jason, one of you tell me what it is that we're talking about today. John,
well, let me tell you, we're going to talk about forensics, but only a certain portion of forensics. As we know, there's all kinds of different forensics out there and whatnot, but we're going to talk about Jason's expertise, which is related to cyber, electronics, and some really neat stuff. And I think one of the funniest parts that I like about it is it deals with this little thing right here. This is a lot of fun. We play games on it. We communicate on it. You know, we take pictures with it. But I don't think people realize how important this little device is and what it can really tell you.
So we're talking.
Recently, I had the opportunity to speak with Jason. I was working on a bit of a project, and interesting enough, Jason filled me in on a lot of neat stuff. So that's why I thought this would be a great opportunity to bring Jason on board and let him tell us what he knows.
So we're talking about truck drivers and cell phones.
Absolutely.
Oh, why not?
Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you're working for, and what do you do for a living?
Certainly. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. So I'm a digital forensic examiner, and I have been for about 18 years now. My existence is completely dependent upon people having digital evidence that may need to go to court. 99% of the time, it doesn't, especially in Canada, but there's always that 1%. And so, no 2 days are ever the same. We deal in cyber investigations, which of course there's a huge outbreak of, especially given the current circumstances. And so that's out of hand. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of civil investigations. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of employees who jump ship and take precious info with them to a competitor, or they start up their own business, things like that. All kinds of civil situations, criminal defense work. Get to see the darkest aspects of society, of course. Someone's got to do the dirty work on that end to make sure justice is balanced. So it's all over the map. And certainly, as John alluded to, one core component, especially in the last two sections that I described, is mobile forensics. So in computer forensics or digital forensics is a very broad term. And there's many, specializations beneath that. One examiner may have one or several specialties, and mobile forensics is certainly one of mine. And, any examiner in today's world would be foolish not to make it theirs as well.
Well, we don't want to encourage others to get in competition with you now. So you're saying recently, John and I were talking about the truck driver for the Humboldt crash, Mr. Sadu. And one of the things that came out in that court proceeding was that he was not on his cell phone. So they would hire somebody like you to dig into that and to give back a report to say whether he was, whether he wasn't. Is that right?
Yes. That's absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, the types of evidence that we can both secure, preserve, and extract can get right down to milliseconds. So that obviously in traffic, an accident situation can be critical to a court case or insurance case or what have you.
That's interesting. Sorry, I'm just thinking, I'm working with a lawyer as well on a different crash. And the evidence, they got the cell phone records, and
Yes.
it looks like the driver may have been on the phone at the time of the crash, but they didn't hire, at least to my knowledge, they haven't hired somebody like you to determine. And perhaps that's because the truck didn't have a GPS system. And so they may not be able to determine that the exact time of the crash and to be able to match it up with the exact time of the phone call.
I see. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of sources for evidence when it comes to the trucking industry. I mean, in a recent.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Our favorite stuff.
Yeah, I've got as a matter of fact, I have a trucking case that's on the go right now. Of course, I can't go into any specifics, but essentially there is, a truck driver whose future is at stake, essentially. And, this was a very, very serious case. There was somebody extremely hurt from an accident, and it's very serious. But anyhow, it's another case that's shown me just how many different sources of evidence can be brought to the picture. There's the GPS component, there's the cell phone component, there can be the data box, right? The infotainment system on the vehicle itself. Right? There can be the dash cam. Right, that's pretty instrumental in the case that I'm involved in, and they all might have a slightly different date and time on them. Right? So, and then there's basic documentation like the driver's logs. Those can actually be really critical in a case. Good old paperwork. So there's a lot of different components that can factor in to a trucking investigation and litigation.
It's fascinating. John, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering, let's kind of do a little hypothetical fun here. So that way we don't have to worry about some other case. Let's create something because that's what we're all about. We invent here. So let's just say I'm driving down the road. Was talking on my phone, blah, blah, blah. Hi, honey, how are you? Yes, I gotta go now. Talk to you later, bye. So I hang up from the phone, and then, oh, interesting, my brother texts me. So I'm gonna take and text my brother back, beep, 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 beep. And then, carry on down the road, put my phone in the cup holder. And then I'm going to take a notice that it beeped at me. So I'm going to pick it back up and it's going to wake up and I'm going to look at it and go, oh, my kids are WhatsApping me. Send them a message. Well, all this time I'm tootling down the highway at about 120K. Okay. So I'm sure I'm a good driver. So anyway,
and you're not unfortunately, from Ontario.
No, God, no. I'm from New Zealand.
But 120K, you're not from Ontario, I hope.
No, exactly. Yeah. Western Canada, maybe. So we're ultimately involved in a crash, and I'm going to lie my face off and tell you I was not on my phone at all. So yeah, I took that phone call, but it was through my hands-free device. I'm sure it was. So from there, what are you looking for? What can you tap into? What do you can look at to prove me the liar that I am?
Certainly. So from your phone, I would have copious amounts of artifacts that would show me one that your infotainment system or your Bluetooth headset was not engaged.
So that
It
was my
would
first.
have,
Sorry, Jason. That was my first
Sorry.
question. You can tell whether a phone call was taken over the headset, or
Certainly.
whether it was okay. Yeah.
sure. And
Cool.
the messages themselves, of course, those will have date and time stamps, when the message arrived, when the message, when your message was composed and sent.
Yeah.
The duration of your phone call, of course, when that started, when that ended. So we'd have all that data. And of course,
What
none of
about
that.
so what about something like Snapchat? Right, that's gone in a few seconds. I've texted whatever message, it went up, that's gone. So that's not still on here, is it?
Snapchat is one of the very few exceptions. And
Okay.
as a matter of fact, so the data may still reside on the server for 48 hours. This is what my understanding is. So chances are that data is probably going to be long gone, but that's one
Right.
very rare exception.
Okay.
Yeah, just about
so
every
now,
other application you could possibly imagine
Okay.
will have some form of artifacts present.
Okay. So what about say I've downloaded the latest YouTube podcast of Safety Dog, the trucking risk and insurance guys. Okay. I've downloaded it to my phone and I've decided while I'm driving, I'm going to set it up on the dash and I'm going to watch it. But it's on my phone. I didn't download it I didn't stream it. I've already downloaded it. So, you can't tell that I've been looking at that. Can you?
Sure, I can.
Ooh.
Yeah. So there's just as some kind of background information. There's a host of processes and operations that are more diagnostic oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are constantly running in the background, regardless of your phone type. Both in iPhones, Androids, they both have all the a truckload of resources that aren't visible to the user, right? And the whole purpose of these resources is to enable the programmers of the device to improve upon their products, to log and report problems essentially, and even log and report performance. So when they're out there beta testing new things, new programs or new version of a program, new version of an operating system, they will have the records to go back and check before they actually release the stuff. And in other cases, of course, there may be, like with Microsoft or with Apple, Google, they may want to be able to diagnose this really quickly, right? If this is something major, there could be some serious liabilities involved. Let's imagine that Google Maps is suddenly sending people into ditches or something like that. They have to be able to go back and see, okay, where did Google Maps send them, right? And with every last bit of data, including whatever possible location information is available. So there's all kinds of programs running in the background and logs being created that are diagnostic in orientation. They're not intended for forensics, but they're the forensic examiner's best friend. And most people have.
Not my best friend then.
Not if you're the devil that you made yourself out to be, John.
Yes, I'm not like that by any means, but yes, I had to switch phases. so this is
yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, in contrast, for the driver who is, in an accident, in one which they're not at fault, this same information could be their savior and best friend.
Sure.
Provided they know, first of all, that this exists, and this is the holy message I'm bringing today, and two, that they will know how to preserve it, right?
Right.
And how not to let somebody else muck it up. That's the really important stuff, is getting that evidence on ice, so that because the truth is going to come out, regardless of whether they're innocent or guilty. It's just a matter of, whether they have the ability to get that evidence preserved as quickly as possible, which really means there'll be more evidence available. I had one case where the driver, and this is, it's great that you're bringing me on here, because so few people know about our practices. We're not a well-known practice. When I started my own business 18 years ago, I had to go out and do presentations just to educate people on the existence of my work. And it's still the case today. So when it comes to, cell phones or computers, anything of that nature, the more time that elapses from the event, typically speaking, the less artifacts that will continue to reside, right? On a traditional computer hard drive, things will eventually become overwritten, right? If they get deleted, they'll become overwritten with time. And it's similar with a phone. Some things disappear within hours, some things within a day, some things within a week, some things within a month. I had a cell phone brought to me in one trucking case where the driver was still using the phone. And it had been, it had been almost a year. It was like 11 months. Well, the lawyers just didn't know. They didn't know to advise their client, hey, bring that phone in here. I've got a forensics person to call. We're going to get this phone put on ice right away. Go out, get yourself a little burner phone in the meantime. Yep. In fact, if I was a driver knowing what I know now, I'd keep one in my glove box. I'd keep a burner phone in the glove box for emergencies. Anyway, so that's the criticality is getting that information as soon as possible, not continuing to use the device because that can cause data to be overwritten.
Right.
And the one thing I would like to say, you mentioned, well, if you were involved in a crash that's not your fault, the phone can be your best friend. By the same token, if it is my fault that I had a crash, frankly, I want to prove that I wasn't on the phone, because if I was on the phone, that's going to escalate everything.
Yes.
But I'm a human. I can make a mistake, and I can have a crash. But damn it, I'm not going to be on the phone if I can possibly. Well, I know I won't be on the phone. So I want my phone to prove that I wasn't on the phone, that I screwed up. I'm a human.
Yes. And, and to that point, in another case, it doesn't seem so black and white when it comes to distracted driving. Right? We all had the fear of God put into us when the laws came out that, 6 points if you're seeing on your phone. Still to this day, I can't pull up at an intersection without seeing somebody obviously either staring at the phone or the crutch. Okay. And it's usually the phone. I'm pretty sure. So, it's in this particular case, while the driver had an accident and he was using his phone. In fact, he was, he had a radio station that he liked to listen to, and it was kind of unique, and it wasn't something he'd just pull up on the old AM FM, but he played it off his phone. And the circumstances were such that I could demonstrate that his use of the phone was not related to the act. Let's put it that way, right? I could demonstrate at least that he had not touched the phone in a matter of a number of minutes, based on the information available. So, it's not. From what I've gathered, no lawyer, I cannot give legal advice, but it doesn't appear that judges will automatically hang someone because they use their phone. It's just a matter of, was the use of the phone integral to the accident?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying about, I can have a crash, but I don't want my phone to be involved.
Right. No.
So.
Right.
Exactly.
And let me ask you this. You alluded to it. Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. You first.
Well, I was going to say, you alluded to it. So if I am involved in a crash, whether it's my fault or not my fault, whether I'm on the phone, Well, I guess if I was on the phone, I should use my phone as much as possible. Sorry.
No comment.
What is the best way to preserve the information on the phone?
Certainly.
Well, and sorry, and then followed up with this. If I was on the phone and it contributed to the crash, should I just destroy my phone?
So I definitely can't comment on the latter.
The latter is, how much information can you get from the Rogers, the Telus, the Bell of the world, and not
Right.
from my device? And would
Yes.
it? And then, of course, why would you have destroyed your phone? That's pretty incriminating. Anyway.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yes. Certainly. So if it was a perfect world, I would say the best way for that phone to be preserved is for the person to turn off all the network connections. So the cellular data, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything, anything and everything that's, a network connection, AirDrop if you're on an iPhone. And then preserve that and get it to me, or to their lawyer to get to me. And if the battery's near dead, and the lawyer is suggesting this may take a while, keep it plugged in and on. Okay,
So
because it's already on. That's the absolute best case scenario. It never happened. Okay. I've never been that lucky in a vehicle case thus far, but that is the best case because there are some things lost when the phone is shut down.
See, that's what I was going to ask. I would have thought,
Okay.
turn my
Yeah.
phone off, preserve it.
Yeah, but
That's what I would have thought.
9 times out of 10, that's what's going to happen, or it'll just run out of power before it actually makes it to me. So, and if someone doesn't, remember to follow those steps, that's the next best thing. Just turn it off, put it back on, and get it to me.
So that's number 2. Number 1 is turn off, put it on airplane mode. I'm an
Yes.
iPhone.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would airplane mode and to turn off the Wi-Fi and the cell connection?
Yeah. Now, there are some versions of phones that will still make some connections when the airplane mode is on. Don't think that's foolproof.
Okay.
So you
okay.
still want to make sure you turn off your Wi-Fi.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then the second thing would be and not the best thing, but would be to power it down.
Second best thing, yes.
Okay, sorry.
Absolutely. And put it in a box, tape it up, put the name, date, what it's for, that kind of thing. Lock it up until you've got your lawyer and it comes to me through the lawyer, that sort of thing. That's usually the path these things take. Quite often lawyers will want to establish the agreement directly with a forensic examiner, just for the sake of preserving the client solicitor privilege. These things can get pretty serious and intense, and they want to ensure that the least amount of information can go to the other party. So typically, the lawyer will engage us directly. Quite often it'll start with, most often insurance carrier actually, insurance adjuster will get the ball rolling, but lawyers will call us directly on this too.
Johnny, you had a
Cool.
question.
Cool. Well, I was just going to say, if I were to put you in front of a room full of drivers, and not necessarily just truck drivers, but any kind of driver,
Sure.
what would you say to them to prevent them, or to get them to think twice about picking this damn little thing up?
Yeah, and that would be an opportunity I would never turn up, based on the fact that distracted driving is like the number one killer now. For sure, I would simply tell them that, if something serious happens, you're going to get caught. Unless you've got luck that is, incredibly beyond the norm, chances are you're going to go down for it. If the police get their hands on it, public law enforcement, that's private industry folks, we basically use the exact same tools and we have the same training, only the police are going to have that phone if somebody is in a lethal car accident, and of course if the driver is being carried away to the in an ambulance to the hospital, they're not going to have much to say about whether the police should look at their phone or not. So rest assured, there's so much data that they're not aware of that's documenting all kinds of activities that they shouldn't even pick it up.
Right. Yeah, because I think you told me once before that even picking up the phone and it wakes up, you can actually record that, how many times you've done it. So I haven't done anything with it, but I've just looked at it. Each time I pick it up and look at it, you can actually track that and measure that.
Yeah, every state change on that phone is typically recorded. Certain makes and models vary, but virtually every change of action will have an entry line, and there's always a date and time associated with that line.
So
in a log file.
What I just heard, and I repeat what I heard, because sometimes what I hear is not what you said. But if I've got a phone in a cradle, which is where it's supposed to be, every time I touch it and the screen lights up again, that's a state change, basically.
Yes.
And it logs itself somehow.
Yes.
Whoa, scary.
So I have a phrase for that. And I got this from a good friend of mine. Every echo has a behavior.
Oh, look at that.
Interesting.
So, we're hitting close to 30 minutes already, believe it or not. But I do have one more question. If I was guilty and I destroyed my phone, how much information can you get from the provider? The bells that tell us I forgot all the American ones, but there's quite a few of them. But
yes.
How much information can you get? Or do we? Or should I just cut that question out of the interview?
No, it's fair. It's fair. So I won't speak so much about the applications and what they store on the cloud, because that can vary from app to app. But law enforcement for sure does gain access to that stuff. Us civil guys, not so much.
Okay.
But certainly when it comes to the carriers, we, at Invista, we actually have a very unique group in our forensics team that do cell site location analysis. So they actually will go and do drive testing, and they will map out what all the cell towers actually capture on a map, so they can, with absolute precision and with the scientific methodology, determine whether or not a statement is true or false that an opposing party is proposing. This is very, very popular in the U.S., of course, where there's a lot of murders. There's a lot of high crime activity where cellular data and location in particular is of great value. So they actually pioneered this process, and they're up against the FBI and all kinds of folks on a regular basis, which is fascinating in and of itself. So what I've learned from that is that what the carriers hold on to is actually a lot more than, of course, what you see on your phone bill, right? And it's it's actually scary in a very big picture way, because they will know more about us than we really do if they were to sit down and do some analytics. They could tell you where you were 12 years ago and where you went every day and what your timings were like, where you went on Friday nights during your last marriage. Any of that stuff, it's all recorded, and I'm not aware of anybody jumping up and down, making sure all that's erased. So anyhow, that's another kettle of fish. But anyhow, it's substantial what they hold on to, and it's from a geolocation perspective, it's very, very powerful.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Jason, I didn't know. Thanks, John.
Well,
for
I know.
introducing me.
Well, I'm glad, because I know one thing's for sure. If I'm ever involved in a car collision, crash, or incident of such sort with a third party, regardless whether it's a truck or a car, I will be instructing my legal counsel to contact Jason directly.
Much appreciated.
So you're of the same belief that I am, that the cell phone would not have contributed to the crash.
No, not at all.
Well,
No.
it's like it's similar to many trucking companies. To kind of switch subjects a little bit, many trucking companies will send their drivers for a drug and alcohol test to prove that they're not guilty.
Absolutely.
To eliminate one accusation. And of course, I think every lawyer would accuse us if we're at fault in a crash, even if we're not at fault. Well, you should have been able to take evasive action had you not been on your phone, would be the accusation they're going to throw at us.
And it
all the
happens
time.
frequently.
Oh, so
It
Jason, you've
does.
had experience
Distracted
with that.
driving is one of the number one accusations against truck drivers.
Yep.
Sorry, say that again, Jason.
Distracted driving is one of the number one accusations in truck driving litigation.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody heard that because,
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
John and I are proponents of drive safe and let's
Yeah.
get off the phone and that
Yep.
type of thing.
Yeah.
And the drivers have heard it.
So,
And unfortunately, they've heard now that if they are on the phone, people like you are going to prove that they were on the phone.
Yes.
Can say a motor carrier hire you directly to analyze a phone in that fashion for a defense, or would it be wise to go through their lawyer first?
I think it would be wise to go through the lawyer
Yeah.
for that.
Oh, even if- Okay.
But you know what? I'm the type of person that if someone shows up at my doorstep and they've got a piece of evidence, I'll ensure it's preserved right away.
Right.
I just won't produce any reports until the legal aspect is kind of accounted for.
Right. I'm just thinking from a defense perspective, the driver is adamant, I was not on the phone. Please, I'd be happy for you to analyze it and exonerate me from the situation. I think a motor carrier from a defensive perspective would be smart to jump on that and say, hey, Mr. Lawyer, we've preserved the phone as best we can. Let's get this thing analyzed right now to help us in our defense. So we can kind of squash anything the plaintiff lawyers are going to throw out there.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised if in the future, if it catches on with, trucking insurance. I wouldn't be surprised if the underwriters come out with this is a part of your process, or something like that, or adjusters.
Yep.
You turn over your phone as soon as you step out of the cab.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see more companies put in stronger best practice distracted driving policies and procedures. They all talk a good game where, turn the phone off, don't talk on the phone whatsoever. But I think because of what you've enlightened us with today is all the more reason to go, guys, don't even use it. Don't touch it unless you're parked safely.
Yes, absolutely. And hey, if anyone out there ever wants to do a random checkup or integrity test on their drivers, that could be arranged.
Your contact info is in the show notes below.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
well, geez, right over my head now. What was that last question I had? It was this. You tell us to preserve the evidence, right?
Yes.
So can we preserve the evidence and keep the same phone number, or is that out of your expertise? In other words, I'm not on the phone. I want to give you this phone to prove that I wasn't on the phone, but I've had this same phone number for, probably 20-some years, and I don't want to switch phone numbers.
That's a really good question.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it is.
John, he only said that to my question. You know that.
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah, preferential treatment here.
That is very, very doable. Because if we can get the SIM card out of there, I mean, I'd like to take a copy of that, but we can get the SIM card out and give it back to you. You should be fine going back to your carrier and getting a new phone to put it in.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Thank you.
Good deal.
You bet.
Jason, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This is great information.
Oh,
My
awesome.
pleasure. My pleasure, folks.
I'm glad to have Jason on our side.
Yes. Jason, any last words or piece of advice?
Just drive safe, everybody. Drive safe.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that so much. I didn't know there was so much information that could be scrubbed from cell phones and, of course, used in court. Thanks to my co-host, Mr. Johnny Farquhar from Summit Risk Solutions. I'm your other host, Chris Harris, Safety Dog, and that's it for this week. If you're getting value from this program, please like, subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment. Thanks. That's it. Safety Dog's out.